Hello, everybody on Earth. I am Space Commander, Design Leader Davidson. We come here today from the Adobe Studio. I have found out in the galaxy a wayward traveler, the lone developer, Commander Andrew Watson.
Hello.
Is here to be your programmer, design partner, and you're going to see today how to code up an actual app going beyond the walls of Adobe XD.
Beyond the walls of space and
out
time.
into where Andrew doesn't know how to wear his helmet. No, I'm just kidding. We do have myself, Brent Davidson, here from the Adobe Spark team. I'm a product designer. And we have Andrew Watson, also from the Spark team, as a developer. And that's who we are. We're going to show you guys how to code up some apps
Cheers.
today. Cheers.
Oh man,
This doesn't work very well.
Oh, I gotta take this off.
Space is hard.
It's hard living in space. Yeah. It's hard being a galactic developer.
Back down here in the atmosphere, I guess
That's
we
right.
can just breathe.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
We apologize for our lame intros.
So here we are.
Oh, we have to say. So, for those of you who might be confused, we're not doing a portfolio review. I'm really sorry. We just really wanted to look like we were in space.
Yeah, we like the space helmets.
We like
put
the
them
space
on.
helmets, and so if you got excited seeing that background, we're very, very sorry. Please tune into a stream that has that, and you'll probably feel better than the way you feel right now.
We will be getting to some review later, but we're going to pick up where we left off yesterday.
Yes. What did we do? What did we do?
For anybody that was with us yesterday, we worked on actually a login screen, and then got really great feedback from Andrew on the limitations of just doing pixel design, and where a good designer-developer partnership can really take that to the next level by starting to look at what are the constraints and the realities when you go to actually develop your design into a functioning app.
Yeah.
So that's where we left it yesterday. Today we're going to cover a little bit again on the actual login screen. We're going to build out a little bit farther, show you some of the awesome stuff that XD can do. And then we're going to take on beyond XD prototyping into what we would call code prototyping. And Andrew's going to talk through some of the things and show you some of the things on screen that he can do quickly when he sort of starts thinking about the approach as a developer to design. So that's like a confusing phrase. We'll unpack that more.
Yes.
But it's not all just executing on a finished design document. We're going to demonstrate the back and forth between the two of us.
Yes, and so you'll actually see a running app that I actually put together based on Brent's design. And so it'll get a little nerdier today than it even got yesterday. But we're still definitely going to be talking. I mean, the overall theme is that designer-developer handoff, designer-developer workflow. So yeah, really excited to kind of keep this conversation going. Anybody here from yesterday? If you were, say hi in the chat, and let's.
Comment in. I see some good comments already. I say Eric says we were ready for a review. So no, we were just landing. Space, and no, we don't have straw technology in space yet.
No, it's because we're an outpost of San Francisco. Straws aren't allowed.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, there's already a lot of junk in space. So
exactly. We don't want to add to it. Exactly.
Awesome. Thanks for everybody. Dubuque, Iowa. I like that.
Nice.
I actually grew up in Wisconsin.
And I'm from Minnesota.
He's from Minnesota, so we got a couple Midwesterners in the house here. And anybody who posts up from, let us know where you're from. I see. Sammy was in here yesterday. Now we got to a couple questions there. That was awesome.
Awesome. Yeah. Great.
And why don't we go ahead and transition to my screen here, and we will review just a little bit about what we did yesterday. And to start, I'll actually say that this is my second time on Adobe Live, and the first time I went through and created a social video sharing app that was had some surfing examples here. So I want to take a second just to go ahead and show you that application, just to refresh kind of where we're at. So this is from the previous time I was on Adobe Live, and you can find it in the archives if you search my name, Brent Davidson, Adobe Live, or maybe we can post it in
Search for astronaut.
Astronaut, yeah. Or maybe we can post the link in the chat.
There you go.
And this was done from scratch. If you want to see how this was made, go check that out. It was definitely fun going from totally blank page through proper box level wireframing, talking about all the different trade-offs you're going to hit when you try to do something like video editing in a mobile application, which is something that Andrew and I know a lot about working here at Adobe. on applications that edit video and photos and whatnot. So I'll take you through a quick run through in this application here. We're going to pretend that we just logged in. It's kind of the home screen. We're on Android here. You see those buttons at the bottom, and we've got
navigation bar.
We've got sort of a piece here where we can say, okay, we've got 2 projects in here. And like I said, the hypothesis for this app was a little bit like a professional storytelling app, so you could maybe do some quick video editing, post out to your clients. Let's go ahead and open up one of these. So now I'm into the sort of project editing mode. You can see I've gotten the sort of story bar at the top here, so I can advance. And that I also have some options to do, some creative pieces down here. So if I want to go ahead and add a bunch of different types of content, I can go ahead and do that. Nice little fun interaction, bringing that menu back down. If I want to go ahead and create some different kind of transition, I can go ahead and do this here. You can imagine this being pretty fun on a real touch device, being able to slide through these menus, have some fun there. And then just like in real life, I forgot to hook up all of the little buttons. So we're gonna X out of that. And I'll just show you some of the other menus here. This one on the left here, that my mouse is going over, just picking all your images, tabbing between photo and videos. And then a couple nice screens here. You can do exposure, contrast, shadows, a couple different basic editing things that you can't always do on a video clip. Even Instagram doesn't necessarily let you edit as much on a video, as you might like versus what you can do on photos. And then like a little trim screen. So hopefully that gives you a quick idea of the application. A couple other screens here, like a camera and whatnot. And I know Sammy yesterday had a question around how to keep all my artboards organized, and like how do you handle the flows for edge cases. This whole thing right here, this is basically the basis of the application. There's definitely going to be some other screens here that we haven't thought about, like for example, this text menu here, for picking text. Like there's probably a lot of options that come with text size, line spacing, all these kind of things. We'd have to get those out. But overall, you just lay them all out on your artboard, and that you have
Hey, can you zoom out for a second?
I've got some sneaky stuff.
Okay. So
we'll go back to.
Well, on the other one, you had a top image above all those, like the Adobe Live 2. Yeah. So that helps me. Let's say I was going into this file. That helps me as the developer to know where to look for the designs that I'm going to be implementing. So I don't remember how much we talked about that, or if I said something, but I don't remember. But it's important as a developer that I know what are the actual designs that I need to be looking at, and they can be kind of all over the place. So the more you can sort of signify, when you're handing it off, that hey, look here. So maybe in the real world that would say, V1 designs, or first, prototype designs or something like that. That would
totally
be
true.
Very helpful, because I've been in files that there's just stuff all over the place, and it's just sort of like, okay, somebody just had to like point, and that works too, but it's nice to just know.
Totally true.
Yeah.
So we can come back to that. I can actually show a little bit more around document organization. If somebody in the chat reminds us, or if we remember when you're going through some of your prototype stuff, I can pull that up in a different file.
Okay, cool.
Cool. So that's generally kind of like the basis of the app. I'm going to transition to what we did yesterday, but I also want to call out we've got the creative challenge going on right now. So if you're working on that, you've got until the end of this feed to go and submit that onto Discord. So that's about an hour and a half from now that we'll get to that piece. Definitely looking forward to seeing what everybody's got there.
Yeah.
It's always really fun seeing what the community's doing. No problem. Any skill level is welcome. Don't feel shy. First step is all about getting out there and getting feedback.
Yeah, and like I said yesterday, I'm coming in as a developer, so I'm not exactly the most qualified to comment on design. I can say what I like, but I definitely come from a implementation perspective and UI best practice perspective, knowing sort of the design languages. So I'll be definitely giving comments from a developer's perspective, and what things to think about, what's going to be easy and whatnot, that sort of thing.
Totally true. Andrew's a smart guy. We're happy to have him on the team. So
he's lying.
Cool. We see a couple late joiners. Yeah. That's fine. I see a couple people that were here yesterday. And so just to recap, we just covered on the last stream sort of how to build this login screen. This flow that I'm showing right here, we talked a little bit about the trade-offs that developers make, different kind of stuff.
And I'll just say, you know, again, a login screen isn't the most, I guess, interesting part of an app, but if you watched yesterday's stream, you know, the summary is that, you know, even a login screen, there's tons of decisions that have to be made from even a design perspective and a development perspective, and knowing what is going to be developed, what are the requirements, all sorts of things. Like, it has so many, you know, ramifications on what you can even put on the screen. So, you know, Brent made a very attractive login screen, so that also helps make this more interesting. But, you know, even the most basic of login screens is pretty complicated.
Totally true. So what we're going to do here, now that we've kind of got that, you know, a bit of baseline, what we covered in the first stream, what we covered yesterday, a little bit of context around why we brought this, you know, foreign species from outer space. If nobody saw the intro,
alien life
if you're
form.
just joining a few minutes late, you'll have to wait to the recording and come back. Another very silly intro. And now we're going to shift gears for the next couple minutes, and we're going to finish out this login screen as a prototype. And then it's going to serve as a great test example for how we go from, you know, an XD file over to development, and how we think about what we're going to learn in those in-between steps. So we're going to do a little hand waving. We're not doing the actual user research in the session, but we're going to say, okay, now we would do this kind of user research with the XD prototype. And then when we, you know, had a little more confidence from there, we would go and say, hey, Andrew, you know, you've been an advisor so far to make sure we're going in the right direction.
Right. Helping, knowing what development needs, that sort of thing.
Exactly. But now we want you to actually sort of start coding some things so we can do some more advanced features. So you'll have to stick around and see what, you know, some of these advanced features are that Andrew can do, and that's where we're going to go.
Cool. We also have the Chat and Win coming up. I don't know, this countdown isn't going, but will soon.
Chat and Win is also going to be coming up here shortly, like so keep an ear out, get some chats in, so you can enter in. Prize yesterday was 100 free stickers from Sticker Mule. Make your designs real. Go ahead and
so that people can put them on their laptop.
That's what we like.
That's what we want.
Andrew's really leading the charge with the stickers.
That's right.
And I will say it's really fun just to get, you know, a physical copy of something that you've got on screen, you know, even if it's something basic, you know, drawing, it's fun to end up having on stickers because you get the professional look. We've used Sticker Mule for things around the office here. Multiple Sticker Mule. Yeah, like Sticker Mules.
Yeah, a bunch of stickers even on my laptop are like little team stickers.
There you go.
So,
cool. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of jump in XD. If you've got comments, Andrew's going to be kind of reading those.
Yeah. Welcome to the latecomers.
Yeah.
We're doing, we're getting started doing some design and talking about designer-developer workflow.
So what I'm going to do here is work on bringing out this prototype flow for a login. So our first screen here on the left, we've got a couple different ways to get started. Continue with Facebook, continue with Google, you know, email, and then the sort of things we have to have here for resetting your password and the link back to login. We talked a bit yesterday about, you know, the challenges around different technical challenges around doing, you know, a social media login versus sort of an email login. And just a quick refresher, you know, the email login would be handled all internally, something that Andrew would be building out. And then the Google...
Or someone like me.
Or someone like him, yeah. So he's trying to get out of his responsibilities already. Yeah.
It's called delegation.
Yeah. So Facebook and Google, you know, there he's doing sort of work to partner and use their APIs, application program interface.
That's right. Hey, he can be taught. Nice.
To say, you know, we're going to ask Facebook for some information about this person, but there's obviously, you know, more behind the scenes there to do. So what our flow is here is going and saying I clicked on email. And I'll show you actually what we have so far. We did do a
Chat and Win countdown in 15 minutes. Sorry.
There we go. 15 minutes.
15 minutes. All right. Cool.
We got a bug from yesterday, Andrew.
I didn't do it. Worked on my machine.
Yeah, I think I know why that happened. That wasn't supposed to. Yeah. Anyways, we'll just hit over the next artboard. So I set email. I want to create a new account, so I'm gonna have to enter an email. So we're gonna need to add a keyboard to this. And then we're also going to need to enter in some kind of password here. And we've got some criteria that we need to meet. Everybody on this feed is familiar with going through this kind of flow. So then we also need to add a keyboard to this. and then sort of show.
When you say keyboard, you mean like an image of the keyboard, right?
An image of the keyboard, and we'll see the limitations.
Where do you get your images of the keyboard?
That's a good point. So you can go to a variety of different places depending on what sort of design you're working on, whether it's from a UI kit from Apple or Google, or a UI kit from your favorite designer that's got different styles out there. And so we're trying to stay in proper Android land today and not make like a custom keyboard.
Yeah. I'm an Android developer. We said that, but for people who are new, I'm an Android developer. I'll be showing an Android app.
And so we've got, I can open the file in a minute, but we've got the Android XD spec file that's got all that awesome Android components in there. Okay, so let's go ahead and probably start with adding that keyboard. So I kind of skipped that step last time just for expediency. Oops.
I'm also curious, is there the idea with putting in that keyboard, even though the user can't type on it, is just to give them that more proper feel, like to signify, hey, I'm typing something in here or whatever.
Yeah, well, you'll kind of see it becomes a little self-evident. And I did go ahead and on my kind of design spec document that I pulled together here. So I started with a blank, artboard. I almost said sheet of paper, but it's digital. Started with a blank artboard. I picked out some colors. I did kind of a combination of getting icons online and drawing a couple of my own, and then chose kind of a standard type scale. So there's other, Adobe live streams that kind of, cover these things in more detail. It's a great foundation. Always feel free to start from somebody's UI kit. But we're going to go ahead and start from the Google UI kit with this keyboard. So I'm going to copy that. And if you think, okay, well, I need to click on this email field and then bring a keyboard up. Okay, so let's be on this artboard and put a keyboard in. Okay, so that's a great keyboard. Shoot, it kind of covers my stuff. So let's copy that out of there for a second. So obviously I'm gonna need to move everything up here. And this is gonna work out sort of nicely, even though that doesn't look like it's working out sort of nicely. I've gone through a couple different, login screen design layouts here. And I chose this particular one because I have this kind of split image area. And so all I can do here is go into my masked image, which gives us that little shape, and then move the image up and make some new room to handle that keyboard. And now, this might sound like a simple thing, but handling where a keyboard goes can actually be kind of complicated.
Yeah.
And especially when you start talking about different screen sizes.
Well, I can say from a development perspective, like actually making the screen respond how you would want it to when that keyboard pops up is just as complicated. Like designing it is one thing, and then actually making it work can be a whole other host of weird problems.
It's totally true, totally true. And like in XD, it makes it really quick, so I can go do some awesome things like I'm changing the shape of this little curve mask here because we can use that in auto animate, and it's really nice, expensive polish that is like really quite easy to get. But then that's actually a little bit more challenging for
we talked about that at the end of the stream yesterday. But curve masks are not something that I get for free. That would involve some pretty interesting code. It'd be fun to make though. But the big question that I had yesterday was, can I even get the coordinates, or kind of what I guess you call them coordinates for a Bezier curve? And the answer is it doesn't appear that there are. So there's perhaps there would have to be some pretty tight communication there, I guess. Because I think you can probably get like pixel offsets and stuff like that. But yeah, it would be interesting. This would pose some very, very unique challenges, and arguably is probably not what we would want to animate, at least when we start making our prototype app. But eventually, when we're making our production app, it'd be something fun to add.
Totally true, and that's a really great example of the spirit of this feed is around talking about the designer and developer partnership, and what that real, actual professional working arrangement looks like. It's one thing to have a great UI design. We really love seeing awesome projects on Behance, but there's always that little bit more to the story of how do you actually end up implementing it, and those stories aren't always shared online. So we're trying to peel back that curtain a little bit, and realistically, to achieve this effect, which we'll go hop into our prototype view here. So I want it to be that if I hit the email area, I'm just going to group those. I just grouped those with a hotkey. If I want this effect here, that took me what, 3 minutes to make?
Yeah.
in XD. It's going to take Andrew a lot longer.
Yep.
Hold on, that's
you
transition.
It's
got to be auto animate.
Yep. Yeah, you got to get the nice transition.
So for anybody that is not super familiar with the prototype mode for XD, what I've done here is I've selected my email field. I've taken this little wire guy here and dragged it over to where I want my email button to go to, which is the next artboard over here. I let go, they snap. And then over here on the right side of the screen, under this little interaction menu, I've got all these different options for different motion types. So I want the trigger, so the thing that triggers begins the animation, to be a tap on the screen. And then I want my action for that transition to be auto animate. Now there's a couple different pieces here, but auto animate is definitely my go-to because it allows you to do some of these really cool transitions that prior to this took a long time to do up by hand in say like After Effects or something. And then there's some other options here. We're going to leave those are the default. There's plenty of other XD tutorials up on Adobe Live that kind of go through all those details if you're interested. So if we cross our fingers, close our eyes.
Yeah.
No, just kidding. Yeah. If we cross our fingers,
I'll do the work for you.
Hit that button.
Did it do it? I didn't see it.
It did it. Andrew
Nice.
Typically just has his eyes closed for most of the day.
Yeah, I actually type with my eyes closed. I find I produce less bugs.
And so if I show that again here,
Nice.
See that whole nice slide up?
Yes.
And then the back button, I need to go back and set to auto animate as well. Once more, boom. So that took, like I said, like 3 minutes.
Yeah.
There's some more things to refine there. I don't know how well it comes through in the feed, but the keyboard should be sliding up from the bottom properly. And then we've got like just a few things that could be massaged there better.
Yeah.
But for the purposes of saying, hey, we have a new app concept. We want to get it out into people's hands, in a user testing, user research kind of way. That's going to work. We've got a keyboard. We've got our email field. The other thing, if you didn't notice, is that little email thing, which right now is placeholder text. It goes up a little higher and then becomes the form title. And then you get your cursor, which is ready to go and helps give you an indication that you have actually entered in that field. And if what I just said sounds boring, well, that's a really core part of interaction design is understanding all these little pieces.
Yeah.
And there's a really good book, I think we called it out yesterday. This guy, Luke Robleski. I can't remember how to spell his last name.
Someone posted a link in chat. If you can post it again, that'd be awesome.
And he really has a really kind of seminal, book, and I think he's published a lot of this stuff for free online too, around form design, and it covers like what happens when you put the title on the top, what happens when you put the title on the side, how does that affect different trade-offs around scan line, the speed of reading it, other UI sort of different challenges there.
Okay, nice.
I want to call out for chat and win. We're going to do that in 5 minutes.
That's
If you haven't gotten a comment in, go ahead and post up. If you're not sure what to say, just let us know where you're tuning in from.
Yeah, we just want to find out. Yeah, where are you?
The magic.
I saw earlier. I didn't comment. Someone's from New Zealand.
All right.
That's awesome. Yeah.
All right.
It's morning there, so good morning. Yeah.
My next door neighbor's from New Zealand, and he's a great guy. So
That's
strong,
awesome.
strong friends. All right, let's take a quick look at comments here.
Someone just asked who was the last resource. Can you say that again in case?
Oh yeah. So yeah, good call, Sammy. This one around form design. The person's name is Luke Robleski.
Okay.
And I'm butchering the last name. But if you Google it, it's like Wrobleski or something.
And if you search for like form design by Luke, something close to that spelling, you'll find it.
If you can't find it, just post up on a comment so we can Google for it.
Yeah.
But he's got a really great book that goes through and details kind of some of these foundational things. It's not like the most on the surface riveting topic, but then once you realize how much of your digital experience, how much the internet and how much of like signing up for online banking and signing up for, doctor's appointments, like important parts of life, are handled through all these different
forms. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and form implementation is something that pretty much every developer is going to encounter at some point. So it's ubiquitous. It's
totally true.
It's ubiquitous, but you don't kind of want to think about it in the first place. When you get to the fun stuff.
We do have a question. Brent and Andrew, what are your thoughts on the Apple Human Interface Guidelines versus Android Material Design and how you approach making cross-platform apps?
Oh man,
this would be a great one for Andrew to talk about.
I can go off on this. Okay, so there's a lot there's a lot there. Here's what I'm going to say as an app developer and an app user. I would say the best thing you can do probably for your users is use device conventions per platform. Users are used to doing certain things on Android. Users are used to doing certain things on iOS. And so, the more you can use those conventions that people are used to, the easier your app is going to be for people to get around. They're not going to feel frustrated. It's just going to feel right? So, for a long time, way back in the day, as an Android developer, I got very used to getting a series of iOS designs and say like make that an Android app and just like literally put the iOS design. That was very bad. But Android was sort of very young and nobody knew what Google didn't provide design guidelines, whatever. So thankfully Google has gotten much more intentional about design language now with material design, and kind of they're already on this kind of second iteration. So as much as you can, I would say stick to platform conventions. There are cross-platform frameworks that actually help you do that per platform. Like you can even write the code once and it kind of makes it more iOS. Actually, it seems like iOS is, I haven't looked at the iOS Apple HIG in a while.
The what?
Human Interface Guideline. Sorry, I used an acronym. I just felt cool that I knew what that was, that I could say the app, the iOS HIG. Yeah, the Human Interface Guidelines, it was actually mentioned. I haven't looked at it lately, so I don't know how prescriptive Apple is, but what's interesting is I actually think in recent years, Apple has gotten a little more lax with their design language. They just sort of moved away from skeuomorphism. I also know what that means. Yeah, that you moved away from skeuomorphism, i.e. making your apps look like physical things, and more to flat layouts and stuff like that. But there are still platform specifics that you see on iOS with like the cancel button being in the upper left corner and stuff like that. But you'll see material design like things on iOS, and it seems like that's generally accepted. So you might have some flexibility there. I would just say, it also depends on your audience. If it's like a line of business app or if it's a very particular user, they might be more okay with a more generic UI. But I would say also if you look on like Behance, you're seeing, designs sort of get to this middle point between like material design and what you might call iOS design or something like that. So people are getting used to these conventions. So actually maybe the best answer is prototype, right? Like you should, get an idea of who your users are, get an idea of your business use case, and then start doing some prototyping and seeing if people know what the controls or views or buttons, whatever it is you're putting on your screen, if people are responding to those views and they know what they are. And so XD is great for not having to commit to an actual code design and iterating very quickly. There's usertesting.com. There's, I don't know, there's a lot of like user testing sites out there that you can put things in front of users. And I would just say definitely do it that way, because the best way to, find out what people are responding to is to just ask them, I guess. And we got the chat and win in 20 seconds starting now. So chat now if you haven't, or forever hold your peace, or you can chat later, but you just won't get any stickers. So
Yeah, if you don't like stickers,
if you don't like stickers,
don't chat.
Yeah.
Yeah, on the cross-platform, it was 7 seconds.
I got 7 seconds. We can come back. All right, pick it up on the other side.
We'll pick it up, break it down, turn it around, something like that.
Something like that.
All right,
it's time. It's time. All right.
It's happening. We're back in space.
Yeah.
Crazy background.
Put my helmet back. Hello.
All right, and who's it going to be?
Who's our winner?
We've got, the robots are doing their work. We are generating names. We were deciding which question was the no, I'm just kidding. That's not how it works. Which question was the worst? No,
Who complimented me the best?
Well, I would like to win that one. You were wonderful today, Andrew.
Oh,
Yeah.
no,
absolutely.
You're not gonna win.
Not gonna win.
You're not gonna win. No.
Well, you don't need to win because you already.
I know. I don't have any room on my laptop, so
yeah,
I can't.
I know. I'm kind of minimal.
You're pretty barren, man.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody's in the Bay Area, or in other cities, but Scoot, which is my sticker here, it's sort of electric on-demand moped rental.
Yes,
and it's a great way to.
How
get
did
around.
you get that sticker? Is the question.
They actually came to the office and we're doing a promo to try to get people
nice.
Because you can do one-offs or you can buy a subscription. To
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Hey, Robert Sullivan.
All right.
You are the winner.
Robert Sullivan, congratulations on 100 free Sticker Mule stickers. I sure hope that you create wonderful artwork of Andrew.
Yeah, I mean that's what I
put them on stickers. Thinking, yeah. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. That's very.
That's inappropriate.
And here we go. We got our plug for Sticker Mule, the fastest and easiest way to buy custom stickers. There you go. Go ahead and check us out on there.
Is that it? Oh, yeah. $1 promo, okay.
There we go, 10 stickers for $1 promo, Adobe Live 19. And yeah, that's what we got.
There we go, rock on. All right, so you were gonna say something about cross-platform design. Apple design guidelines versus material design.
Yeah, I just want to give a quick shout out. We got Houston, I've been down there. Everybody wants stickers. Well, everybody can have stickers if you go to Sticker Mule.
That's right, yeah, that's right, yes.
19. Bay Area there for Thel. Awesome. Oregon, love Oregon.
Yeah,
I've been up to Bend and Portland and Hood River. There we go. Go Astros, like it. Yeah, so cross-platform design. One really just brutally honest thing is how much time and effort and team members do you have to create totally separate apps, or should you shoot for a design that's going to kind of be successful on both?
Yeah.
There's some things you can't get around, obviously the back button is probably the most glaring difference from the UI side.
Yep.
But right now, we're not necessarily leaning into any particular, on this login screen, we're not necessarily leaning into anything that's particularly Android or particularly iOS.
Mm-hmm.
And that gives us a little bit more flexibility.
Yeah. Yeah. Now you've got the back button down there, and that's good because it's nice to see that if you're going to prototype to Android users or something like that. But it would be just as easy to get rid of it and just
totally. So
add a cancel button. I mean, there's ways of doing back on iOS too. So
exactly. So
design feedback countdown is getting started. So please get your designs in on the challenge in Discord. You got an hour.
56 minutes.
But you don't need to listen to us. Just go design something.
It's
probably better that way.
So we've got 56 minutes, 27 seconds of awesome cross-platform
Android
design. We're just going to let Andrew actually talk for 56 minutes. I'm just going to hang out.
You go ahead and design some things. I have a lot to talk about.
So I'll show you what I'm doing here. I showed you the last step where we had just doing this. So I go from my email form being placeholder text. People also call this ghost text. I prefer placeholder text.
I call it a hint. In my language, it's the hint text.
Oh, like with an H? Hint?
Hint, yes. Okay, as in you're hinting to the user what they should be putting in the input field.
So this was the step we did last time, email form, and then what I've gone ahead and done is add that next step. So say, hypothetically, I type in my email, and then the next thing is I'm going to have to set a password. So auto animate, again, has given us this very nice, awesome, sweet animation that Andrew will either have to work, to do, or we'll have to have a conversation about what's a different design that we could come up with that would also be neat and spicy and flavorful and bring the hotness.
That's right.
But also
it's all about the flavor.
Yeah, but also would be easier for him to sort of code. We can cover that later if we have time. We focus still a little bit on how do we make this, now an interesting experience. So I've got a keyboard, I've got a password, entry field, and we can go ahead and hook that up to the next piece. So again, just if you're not familiar with prototype mode, it's super fun. Go ahead and click on the thing that you want to make interactive. Drag our little blue line over there.
Can you only drag? You drag to screens, right? Like you're signifying move to this screen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep. So just connecting our password here. Then we just want to enable this back button. Probably wouldn't be because this is a state change. these are two different screens that would just be one screen in actuality. You wouldn't use the back button to go out of a form field.
No.
But
you might go out use a back button to close the keyboard if you don't want to type anymore, but you probably don't need to prototype that.
So now you'll see, okay, we got our password placeholder text. I click on that. Now I've got, my cursor thing, totally just blanked on the name of that. So I know that my text when I type in is gonna go there. And it looks like I've actually jumped forward a little too far. So we actually have another state that we need because we're not ready yet. So this would actually be like a blank password doesn't meet the characters, minimum 8 characters. You still haven't added a special character, and we haven't checked for a common phrase because there's nothing there. So let's go ahead and add a sample sort of password piece, and we just do the asterisks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, because we're overachievers.
That's right.
Yeah. And because this is kind of a special character, I'm going to break our, visual guidelines with my nice text scale, so that this actually fits. So sometimes you gotta modify a little bit. That's 18 bold, aka heavy, is not what your type scale would tell you to put here, but just because it's an asterisk special character, we're just pumping it up so that it actually fits. And then for the purposes of making it clear for people what's happening here, we'll put the cursor there at the end.
Sammy just made a really, really good comment about actually testing functionality, iOS even specific conventions with users, and using that as an argument killer. And that is a very good point to make about not killing arguments, but making the best decisions for your users. It's easy to speculate, but when you actually have that user feedback, you know what you need to do. So it's helpful for both designers and developers.
That's a good one. I like it.
Yeah, very good comment.
And one thing that's challenging, and I think this is kind of what this is touching on, is like using. Are you saying like using iOS convention on Android, or
I don't know. She didn't specify, but basically just like, and maybe it is on Android, but just the question of whether to use them even or not. I guess maybe even in an iOS app, because maybe people are getting less used to it or something like that. But if it is an Android app, then all the better, because it would seem then. All the better that. You can make that strong point that you shouldn't use iOS conventions on Android, because users are actually showing you that they expect to see not iOS things, but they expect to see Android things.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a big topic, because it also kind of gets at like how unique should you make the things you're putting in your interface. And I think there's this common expectation from people who are getting into the field of, technology, there's all these people, these creative ideas, I have to come up with something new. And really what you want to do is have something that you have a product that does something new, but you use kind of existing understood ways to get there. And so, an example like, Instagram's the easy example. The new thing that they did was just try to do one thing and do it really well for photo editing. It was only on mobile. At first, I think it was only a square photo.
It was.
Like a couple really good photo filters, and but they didn't invent. Call me out if I'm wrong, but as far as I know, they didn't like invent some crazy new UX paradigm.
No,
because it's hard to. These things are essentially a visual language that we communicate with, and they build over time.
Yeah, I think we really need to harp on that. That like these visual languages are just that, like they are something that people intuitively understand, but can't necessarily communicate like that they expect it, or that they're going to respond to it. So it's a really good point to say, it's like, it might feel constrained to be like, you have to use these design guidelines or something like that. Like, why can't I be creative? But in the real world, if you try to be too creative, then you end up with confused users. And it can feel frustrating, but I think you should see it as a good challenge. and also, you know, it does give you some structure and ability to, you know, it gives you direction of maybe where you can be creative. And what I will say, we touched on this yesterday, especially like in the design feedback portion. Motion can help you convey things that people might not be expecting. You know, you want to use motion to delight users, and you want to use motion to convey something. It shouldn't just be, you know, sparkly and flashy, right? You want to actually use motion in an app to say, look here, or you're doing this, or that sort of thing. And I would say that, you know, maybe skeuomorphic animation is maybe, like, maybe we're not supposed to make things that look like leather in our app, but making motion that sort of evokes certain feelings depending on what the user is doing. So I don't know if that's skeuomorphic or not, but you know, that can be a really good way of conveying something new that the user wasn't expecting. You know, a really good example of, and you'll see this in apps, it's not something that's built in, but you know, if you type an invalid password, maybe I should put you on the spot. We didn't talk about this. I should put you on the spot and make you do this, where if you type in a wrong password, you know, it like vibrates, the password field kind of shakes and clears itself out or whatever. Like, it's showing you like, hey, this is wrong, you know? That's a really good example of a little animation that's not part of any design guideline. You know, it's not material, it's not iOS, whatever. But at the same time, it communicates something very particular. So I'm actually curious if anybody in chat has ever implemented an animation, sorry, not implemented, wrong word, designed an animation meant to convey something, and if you can somehow type that out in words, or if you have a GIF of it that you can post in the chat, that'd be awesome. I don't know if we can open it, but anyway, I'd just be curious, because it's always very, very fun to see what people are trying to communicate with motion. So.
I like it. So I'm just clicking away over here.
Yeah, and, what are you wiring up some prototype stuff?
Let's just see where it is at. We would go back to, let's say that one. All right, I haven't looked at this yet. You're getting some real live design here on Adobe Live, surprise, surprise. All right, so working on our login flow. If you're just joining us, we've got Andrew here, is a developer from the Adobe Spark team. My name is Brent. I'm a designer from the Adobe Spark team, and we have a cutting-edge Adobe Live feed where we are partnering to show you how designers and developers actually work together in the real world, going beyond the walls of Adobe XD and into the realm of the crazy world that developers live in.
That's right.
Talking about the trade-offs, the different things that you end up having to make when you're in this process.
Things you need to be aware of as you're designing.
Totally.
Things to think about, that sort of thing.
So what we're doing right here is we're working on a login flow for a social video app, and we're going to do just a little bit more XD design and show you what a prototype in XD would look like. Totally valid use case, super helpful use of the program. Really allows you you'll see like a half an hour to go out and then put an app in people's hands, to your friends, people at coffee shops, you know, different users that you might have, you know, at your company, and then get that really quick feedback. But then we'll show and demonstrate how we're going to hit some wall that you just invariably will hit, because they're different, very fundamental, different approaches. And then you'll see what Andrew can do, but also the sort of speed trade-off that we hit as well. Yeah. So with that context, let's take a look at how our login flow is doing. We're in sort of halfway through our login flow. We've decided to make a new account by registering with our email address, you know, instead of Facebook or something. I want to go ahead and say, let's just pretend I typed in my email address. Looks good. I hit next. Now we have to enter in our password. So let's say we need to hit on our little password field here, get our cursor, and then what I did is I just hooked up the keyboard to be the interactive piece. Okay. So the whole keyboard is a touch area right now. And you can see this with my mouse, how it turns into a little pointy finger everywhere over the keyboard. And that is basically just a dumb way of us telling XD that I want to interact with the keyboard. So let's hit that. And then I used two things there, a time trigger, as well as our normal prototype tool to say, hey, I typed in my password.
Okay, interesting.
So let's run through that. I'm actually gonna slow that time trigger down just a hair. Let us know in the comments, anybody who, are you familiar with XD prototyping?
Yeah.
Is it something
you
new
use?
to you?
Something you are going to use now that you see the
Yeah.
power of it?
So we'll do that again. I just want to slow that time trigger down a little, went by a little fast. So I'm going to click on that keyboard, which gives, an approximation of if I was actually typing. So I hit on the keyboard, my hands are up in the air. I didn't advance that, it did it on its own. And this is gonna be hopefully a familiar enough experience for people where they can say, yes, I totally get it, but I don't actually understand, for example, that there was no common phrase, or if we had that as an error. And we might be testing out some additional security features to say you can't use QWERTY, QWERTY, the most common phrase, your keyboard, or 1, 2, 3, 4, or password, or your own name, or the name of the app. This is where Andrew and I can divulge our hacked passwords, personal preferences.
Uber developer.
Yeah, so maybe we're trying to figure out, and this would be a very, very real design test. Maybe we're trying to figure out how do we communicate this common phrase, thing. And everybody, I bet, on the feed has run into this where you end up having like, oh, you can't use QWERTY, or the password you used 30 days ago, or whatever. And so this is a really quick way. It doesn't really matter in this case, let's say hypothetically, to use the keyboard. It matters more that somebody understands, hey, I'm in this box right now. The box I'm in is in login, and oh, what the heck is a common phrase?
Yeah.
So let's say that was about where we wanted to be with our sign up. There's way more I could do to this. We're not saying that this is a finished design by any means, but that should give you a little bit of understanding of how we think about using XD for the prototype. And I'll finish this by rolling through that once more to show you sort of from the beginning what we've got here. Oh man, that bug is so crazy.
Our wonderful bug.
Okay, we're just gonna delete this artboard. I think that should solve it. There we go. For anybody that saw that quick bug, that was a time trigger kind of bug because I'd changed layer names.
And it wasn't a bug in the app; it was a bug.
Yeah.
It was a
important
bug.
distinction.
Yeah. It was a bug in your setup.
A designer
if you will.
bug.
Yes. Getting some good comments, by the way. People are saying they do prototyping, been using
cool.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. Sorry, I was in the zone. Let's hear.
It's okay. Tanika just asked wondering if, I assume she's talking about prototyping, wondering if prototyping would save some time, pros, cons. It's actually pretty much what we're talking about in the context of making that prototype versus making like an app, what you might call an app prototype.
Yeah. Sorry, I was also reading her other question around using overlays continually copying the full artboard.
Oh.
Yeah, probably.
Oh, actually, sorry. I think that you're right. That's what she was asking. I'm sorry. Yep. Okay, never mind.
Yeah, probably. I would just reference like the proper XD prototyping. This is not meant to be exhaustive on prototyping. The overlays, are a little bit more powerful.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what she was asking.
Yeah, so there's a lot of really great deep dives into that. This is just the method I sort of ended up using in the feed yesterday. More than one way to do the same thing in some cases. So, cool. So let's see any other cool comments. Yeah, Sammy talking about that she says without some motion cues, users have been very confused about what just happened in our app. Totally true, and there's two sides to that. One, motion's really powerful to sort of say, like on a Mac computer, when you minimize something, it like fades down into the dock. Window goes down the dock. Very powerful to show you where it went. There's cues like that can help. You then also have to ask the flip question of why are people confused about this thing without motion?
Without motion, good point. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. You might be doing something that users just are not expecting at all, or whatever. Yeah.
Exactly, and there's a lot of examples we could talk about going back to that one, like all the way back to early days of personal computers, of like where the heck's the window and all this kind of stuff. So let's take a quick run through our prototype here and say that we want to sign up with email. Let's say that I go ahead and type my email in. Go next. Go ahead and type my password in. auto animate, and then we can sign up. I'll take one more run through there and actually show you 2 screens that we, if we're doing this for real, would definitely drop. So sign up with email. Why would we ask you to hit a button called next just to get the keyboard to show up?
Yes.
So we would skip this screen.
Okay.
Oh, well, shoot. Now we, well, okay.
You'd make it so you click on email.
It's not all,
Right?
What happened there? Prototype, this is what happened there. Depends on which one. Yeah, correct. So we would actually, well, here, I'll just show you. So some of these things we just arrived at because of how we're doing the live design here. But what we would actually have it do, so you click on email, and now you've got the keyboard right away. No point in this interstitial kind of piece. You would have typed in your email, hit next, and then this one should be just clicking straight on the keyboard. So we would just go from here. This is just kind of detailed.
It's interesting because you're kind of in effect like debugging your prototype, which is kind of interesting.
Basically,
like you actually have to click through it and use it and kind of figure out where to click and that sort of thing.
So this one would have the password. You'd have a cursor here, and you just tap on the keyboard, and there it would go. So again, we're trying to get through this quickly. At this point, we would have done our, XD prototyping. We would have taken this either around the office or out to users, achieved that sort of thing. And then maybe taking that information back, made some tweaks to it, and then say, hey, we like the direction we're going. We're getting increasingly, confident about the way we phrased, no common phrase or whatever the feature is that we're testing. But people are wondering why the keyboard doesn't work, and people want to actually log into their own account. And people want to actually experience the failed password cases more, which like Andrew said, vibrate the password field,
right.
And some of these things we could simulate that with the time trigger and everything, but the speed that you go through and try different password combinations needs to just be replicated, and without being able to type and have logic around that typing. And then maybe have that logic around that typing actually let you sign in to the actual application. There's still going to be some gap between the mental model of where you're at and where you want to be.
Yeah.
And that's where in the real world, software development, this is like that back and forth that really happens.
Yeah.
So if there's any questions on just kind of that setup and whatnot, and just what we're doing here. If we lose anybody, feel free to ask in the feed.
Yeah.
But I'm going to turn it over to Andrew here. He's been doing some prototyping on his own.
Yeah.
And I want to make a big disclaimer. He's been prototyping in Android Studio.
Yes. This is developer land.
So everything you're going to see on his screen is...
There it is.
Yeah, everything that you're going to see on his screen is... not XD.
That's right.
So we don't want to scare you away.
Yes.
And make you think
don't turn the stream off now. I'm not gonna explain this stuff. This is just meant to be impressive. Ooh, red text.
So this is not XD. We're just trying to show you a little bit in his world. He's going to walk you through these features on the phone.
Yeah.
And as he goes, we're going to talk about them and sort of why we would have this be a code prototyping feature.
Yes.
Versus relying on what we did with XD prototyping feature.
Yeah, for sure.
Take it away, Andrew.
So actually, Ahmad just asked, what next? What language does the developer use to make this app come to life? Well, this is it. This is Android. In Android, we're using a language called Java or Kotlin. But there's a ton of different programming languages to make apps, and so talk to your developer what they're using. Web, it's something different. Brent? Can we actually go back to your design though?
Yeah.
Real quick, can you go back to Brent's screen, please? Yes. Can you go to the designer, the actual what we might call the designer of
the preview?
The preview, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
See, we're just translating.
Because we did the login live. And yeah, Rothel said use Swift. Swift is iOS. Yeah. No. I'm sorry. The actual editor, where you actually pick. But you showed at the beginning of the screen, the image editor. like with clicking around in the, like where you adjust contrast and stuff.
Oh.
Is that editor? Is that what you call it?
Yeah, so I guess there's a little bit more setup here.
Yeah.
So I just switched back over to my full file for the Story app. And full context, if you didn't hear earlier, this was an app that I had created on the first time I was on Adobe Live, and it's a social video graphics editor. And what we've talked about here was...
You keep talking, I'm just gonna...
Okay.
Nope.
What are you trying to... Oh, yeah, there
you
you go. What we've talked about for this feed was to sort of show you the prototyping of like what's a feature that we would actually want to have. And so, realistically for like that login experience, you could do some of the things I just talked about of like having the actual keyboard, doing these things. But, we probably have more questions in reality about the actual core editor experience and how that works than we necessarily would login. I think we'd still check it, check login and whatnot. But there's a good example here where Andrew's going to be recreating the screen in the center here.
Yes, right there.
And talking about how do we actually make it so you can edit this text where it says Baja Days. How can you actually interact with some of these things and take it to that next step closer to actually, producing a real app.
Yes. Okay. Yes, and again, the reason I did this screen is because we designed. I didn't have the design. We designed the login screen live. Brent, excuse me, designed the login screen live yesterday. So I did that. Also, arguably, if you're testing an image editing app, you may want to do actual user testing around.
Totally.
The actual functionality rather than the login, but there are definitely cases where you want to even do that with login. So without further ado, I will show you the app that I made. This is it. Yay! This is an actual live Android app. And if you were paying attention to that design, you may very quickly notice some things that are different about what I have on my screen versus what's in the designs. And I'm not going to talk about that yet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just get a little more high level around, again, what is possible with an app prototype. And I want to be clear about what I'm talking about with an app prototype. There's a lot of different things you can create. When you're writing code, you can actually, obviously you can make the full app, or you can just sort of code in dummy things. And what I'm talking about here is I'm actually saying, there might even be a case to be made to not really actually implement, your actual app, but just sort of have certain features that can do more than what an XD prototype can do, more interactivity. There's also this idea of what was the contextual path through the app. A big thing that an app prototype can do is it can react very dynamically to what the user has done in previous steps. And so what I'm going to highlight here in a few different parts of this app demo are those things. So let's talk about the first thing. So we talked about this yesterday, but there was actually a little bit of confusion in our design handoff, which is very, very easy to do. I had a different design file. So I started implementing what you see here based on a design that was a little out of date. And so my Baja Days looks different than what was on, I actually have XD open there. So is this what yours look like? This is XD now. This is XD.
Well, so this is actually interesting.
Is this an older design too?
Well, no. So this is a font error.
Oh.
So
yeah, that's not Futura, is it?
Well, neither of those are Futura. So Futura is the UI font that I chose for this.
Yeah.
So just like Android uses Roboto and iOS uses SF UI as their typefaces, I chose Futura as the typeface for the actual UI in the app.
Yeah.
What we're seeing here is now this app concept is graphics editor. So we're taking all kinds of different fonts and putting them over an image.
Yeah.
And so the font file didn't actually
load up here in mine for whatever.
And this is actually kind of a good example of if we'd done this as a cloud document, I would think that those would
come over.
Come over. Yeah.
Okay. So this is XD. This is Android Studio, and this is an emulator. By the way, I didn't say that. This is what's called an Android emulator. It acts like a real device, but it's on your computer, so it's easier to work with. But now, so let's say we're building this interactive app where people can can put video and add text and design very convenient, quick designs out of them. I wonder if there's an app like that. Oh, there is. It's Adobe Spark. And so you want to find out, what do people want to, like what do people put on this, what do people want to type on the screen, or, let's say you want to give people in this prototype the ability to change what you see. An XD prototype would not allow you to dynamically add text here, but with an app prototype, I actually can. So let's do Adobe.
This is magic in the making.
This is magic right here. Adobe Live. I can even go to a new line. 2019. It's the best. All right, let's see what happens. Ooh. So it's dynamic. It's dynamic. It's actually updating to what I typed in. I can put in anything and change it. There you go. Look at that.
Hi, Brent.
Yep, that's
my name.
That's your name. Yeah. So right here, we're getting some things that we can't do with XD because it's this actually maintaining the state. By the way, we need to comment on the design feedback countdown. It's about 30 minutes away. Get your designs into the Discord chat so we can take a look at them and have some fun with those too. So now, here's a question. What happens if the text gets really long? Okay, well that doesn't look, why is it underlined? Oh, well that's a weird thing with this, but what also another thing that perhaps an app kind of oriented prototype could show you is well, look at what happens when I put lots and lots of text in there. This box starts going up against the edge, and quite literally we're seeing an edge case. I've never actually gotten to make that joke. Wow, that was awesome.
So edge case, if not everybody knows, edge case is the sort of challenging space.
Yes, like when you're designing or developing.
Yeah. So if like we said, you're making a bank login thing, and you log in successfully. An edge case would be if you were logging in after you had visited 3 countries in a row that were on the list of questionable countries that the bank was whatever, and you ended up in some weird area of their security system, and it wouldn't let you log in.
Yeah.
That's an edge case. So it only affects, a very small portion of people. The challenge becomes as your product gets more and more successful, well, that 1% or 0.5%, of people starts to become a lot of people.
Yeah.
So products that have hundreds of millions of users kind of don't really have many edge cases because there's a lot of people in each of them. Yep. And that's really what can end up creating a lot of these pieces like Andrew just mentioned, of, well, if that text, is hitting the edge of if the white bounding box around the text is hitting the edge of your image, maybe you can't select it anymore. That would be a bad user experience. Yep. If I type too much and now I can't actually hook the edge of that, drag handle. So, if you were a startup, too bad. We got to get to the next feature. If you're a big company, that's then something that you kind of have to pay attention to.
Ooh, I just learned something about the emulator.
So already just like Andrew was saying, when we look at, the way that we would actually go about learning about the successfulness of our designs and how, users are reacting to them in the real world, the keyboard is just such a great example case to show, because, we can do a lot now with this string of text. We could have this be shown in other areas, and maybe we'd have a different flow happen for the user, whether they typed over or under, in this case, 100 or 80 characters or something might be, too much text or too little text, for
another question.
Cases.
What if you don't type anything, right?
This is a great one. Yeah. Oh. So what Andrew just demonstrated there is called a zero state or a null case.
Null.
That's the nerdy way to say it. And sometimes you see this represented in just the design community, screenshots that you see going around where people say oh, this is a zero state. But a lot of times it's a page that's loaded for a new profile, and you don't have any data in it. But there's a lot of other places, depending on your application type, where you're going to have something where, oh shoot, there's no, text entered in here.
Yeah.
One thing I like about XD is if you have a text field that has if you delete the text and then click out of it, that text field just disappears. And it's not always the case in design programs where that happens. And so then you end up with these like ghost case, of like text field that's invisible, and it's just kind of like a bad state to be in. I never would have thought accounting for that when I was making a project solely for putting on Behance or something, or a project just for fun that I wasn't, working on a developer with. But when you start having a developer in the room, totally changes that conversation around, oh, I didn't even think about it.
Yeah.
And then, worst case scenario, Andrew tells me, well, actually, if you delete all of the characters and then hit enter, it crashes the app.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
And so that one is a big challenge and a very frustrating thing that you can end up with, like, oh wait, this edge case actually leads somewhere really bad.
Yeah, and as a developer, having those null cases, as they're called, is super, super helpful to see. Like, those are the questions that I am going, if I don't see it, I'm going to ask. What if there's nothing? What if it's a new user? What if the user hasn't typed any text in that box? What happens to it? That sort of thing. So the more you can anticipate those null cases and design for them, you're going to help your developer. But a good developer also should ask those questions as well. So if there are any developers on the stream, you should definitely try and think of them and get back to your designer and say, hey, why don't you design that? So let's talk about another thing that you might want to see happen in your app prototype, and that would be editing the actual image. And so here, if I click here, I've actually got some editing functionality, and you can actually adjust this image in real time. You can adjust its saturation, and you can adjust its alpha. But I don't think you can do both at the same time, because I didn't code that in. Yeah, you can't. You can't do that. But you can learn a lot by having this functionality in an app prototype. This sort of dynamism, again, we can still change the text. We can still do everything else we could do while modifying this image in real time. So the idea around prototyping this is you might want to know what sort of modifications do users want to make on their display content, their images, their videos, whatever. And you're not totally sure what image modifications, or do they understand what it means? Saturation, I assume everybody in saturation knows, everyone in chat knows what saturation means, but does an average user know what saturation is? Now, you could get this information by using an XD prototype, just putting that word on a screen and saying, do you know what saturation means? It means getting rid of the colors. Oh, okay. But giving the user the ability to sort of see how it works in real time and things like that, you can potentially learn some different information about, that modification. And so, this is just an example of what you can do with this prototype. But again, I didn't code it in, but what we could do is we could make this prototype so that as you make these modifications, they actually are stored. Well, in this case it is. You can navigate around, and then you can do more testing and seeing how people are responding to this and that sort of thing.
Yeah, can you go back to the screen with the image manipulation?
Yeah.
Yeah, so again, this is a really powerful use case for user testing where, we can simulate some of these things in XD. We could put a, white box over the image and, allow you to like tap through or use a time trigger or something for, different opacity levels. But, that's way different than having something like saturation and contrast, where that's a proper image, editing piece. And then being able to combine them all. And so really quickly, like we could take out, especially if say we don't do any text stuff in this, we could take out this screen right now and say, it's almost the year 2020. We've had a lot of image editing apps out. People have been using Instagram. Can you go back to that screen again?
Oh, sorry, I keep going back. I just really like hitting, this is a real back button, by the way. It's really fun.
We could literally do prototyping with just this screen.
Yeah, for sure.
And go out and say, do people even want or understand or even care about these adjustments, or do they only want photo filters?
Yeah.
And that's a big question that would have a big impact on the design of your app. And this could be, maybe I spent a half an hour in XD making a screen that Andrew could riff on to get to here. And maybe he didn't even like finish like here, like those corners aren't rounded correctly.
No.
Like,
And I did this contrast doesn't do anything.
Yeah, and like red is not the color we would go for with these. But you know, this I really just want to underscore for everybody. And I'll say if you're tuning in, we're talking about
if you're tuning in at this stage of the game, you might be wondering, why on earth is there a bunch of gobbledygook text on the screen and what looks to be an actual phone on the screen? So sorry for the confusion if you were coming for XD. That was earlier in the stream. So carry on. What are we doing here?
Yeah, we might get back to XD in a couple of minutes. But
Here. How about this for now? I'll show it.
Well, no, go back to so Andrew's a developer. I'm a designer. We're both on the Adobe Spark team, and we're talking about how we can do really design and prototyping in code. And this is not to teach you guys how to code, but to understand, you know, as you're getting more proficient in XD, as you're, you know, your first position or first time working, you know, with a designer or developer in a different way. You know, these are things you can think about how to sort of work together.
Yeah. And knowing the trade-offs is just super powerful. Knowing what you're trying to achieve is what you can achieve, what you can learn is super powerful and helps you make really good decisions.
Totally. I see a question from Ahmad around what is saturation. So I'm sure there's some really fancy definition of this, but Andrew can demonstrate. So Ahmad, if you're listening, go look at your screen now.
Oh, it grayscales the image. And actually, if I bust
that's kind of a bad image.
It's a bad image.
Yeah.
It's almost deset there. How about that?
Ah, perfect.
Look at that.
So this is a real application functioning.
Yeah. This is dynamic. Oh, that's helpful.
Yeah.
Just
so here's saturation.
There's saturation.
Yeah, and so saturation is basically, is it black and white or color? You know, I'm sure if this was a Lightroom Adobe XD feed, we would have an hour-long discussion on
what it is,
the technical definition of saturation. But can you saturate us again?
Yes, I can. Here, let's resaturate.
There we go. I like the colors in that photo.
It's very nice.
So yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Let's see. So those are kind of the two most dynamic options in the app, but I also did enable this scrolling here, so I can very easily change what shows up in this list. And you know, this is not too much different than what you might find in an actual an actual like XD prototype or something like that. But getting back to what I said earlier about I want to make sure, contextual path. The contextual path through the app. Sounds so cool. I could, in this prototype, I could make this little scrolly thing here react to what the user has done previously. Like a good example would be, you know, if they click on something and we need to show dynamic options. That's what this prototype could do. So a really good use for an app prototype with respect to navigation is, you know, can the user find their way through the app? Like prototyping out a dynamic UI that sort of reacts to the user's input and what they're doing and where they want to go. You can learn, you know, you can do so much more. And then again, comparing that with actual user input, you can just get so much information about what your users expect and are doing. You know, and learn, you know, just so much about your app. And what I want to say is I didn't specify it. So this, what you see here, everything I've shown thus far took me from scratch about a day to do. And a day of development effort, probably actually a little bit less than a day. I've been doing Android apps for a while, so I can get in and get out pretty quick. But, you know, all things considered, a day of development to learn some very valuable insight about your app, to me feels like not that bad of a trade-off, you know? It just always depends on so many things, but, you know, there are other things, you know, that you can do to save time, or, you know, I implemented a bunch of features. It might be best to implement one feature that you want a prototype in front of users, like Brent said, just having this be the screen or whatever right here, not you know, being able to swap out these, you know, all these things or whatever. But so, you know, it doesn't have to be a ton of development, and I would say it shouldn't be. Also, of interesting note, when it comes to app prototyping, one thing I've learned just in general with app development, the uglier the app is at the early stages, the less critical people are of it. Like, it's easier to say, like, this doesn't look so good, so just tell me about this one thing. If you go too far and make it look kind of good, and then it's got like all these bugs that people aren't expecting, like they might actually get blocked. They're like, why can't I click on that thing, right? Like, this looks too good. So if you're building an app prototype, if you're working with a developer building an app prototype, actually not making it look good can actually benefit your research, because it helps people focus on the one aspect that you want to get answers around. So not styling these little scrubbers could actually be, or seek bars as they're called, could actually be very beneficial, because the user isn't going to get too connected to the layout that they're seeing and rather focus on the functionality. And Sammy's asking if horizontal scrolling can be prototyped in XD. It cannot currently, but that is coming, right?
Yeah, it can't currently, but that's a great example. If that's a feature that you're interested in, get in on the user voice channel
for please do.
XD. Or bring it up in the Discord. But the user voice channel, you go and see a feature you want and vote on it. And I can tell you for sure, on teams across Adobe, that is actually brought up in meetings.
Like, we just had one before this.
And looked at. And we just were talking about that with a feature for Spark. Post coming, that is a big indicator of what engaged people sort of want. Obviously, we know we want it in the app. There's a lot of great things that XD team's been up to. So it is going to come. Like I said, we're the Spark team. I can't comment too much on exactly when.
We're not going to promise anything.
Yeah.
Nothing.
But yeah, the example here for Andrew, though, we talked about is like, depending on. Maybe this would be device type dependent. There's a lot of different Android phones out there, and maybe you'd offer, maybe one of them just can't do video, and so we would, just offer photo or something if it was a really far back device or different kind of things like that. And so this would be a way that we could sort of understand that.
Yeah. One thing I'll highlight. This touches back on what we talked a lot about yesterday, but every design decision you make has an effect on your developer, or it can. It won't necessarily for sure, but it can. And it can be surprising, I think, maybe for designers to to find out that some things were difficult or actually involved code for the developer. And so I pulled up the code. All this code right here. Again, we're not here to try and teach you coding or try and go through that code or explain it or anything. The reason I'm bringing it up here is because what I want to highlight is all of that code made what you see here possible. I didn't get this for free. I couldn't, I wish I could, but I can't drag around arrows and things like that. And so even something as simple as this rounded corner right here, or at least a rounded corner that did not have a rounded corner at the top.
Yep.
That was the key, right? Rounded corners I can do for free. Rounded corners where the top two aren't becomes actually much more difficult. Even something, it requires code. Even something as simple as what you would call this left margin right here, the left margin that you see on this text so that it can scroll like this, that is something that took a little bit of additional effort on my part to make it look the right way. So that's also so much why we're promoting this developer designer collaboration, because the more should we not do this because it requires code? No, that's not what I'm trying to say. But being aware of the fact that these decisions have an effect on your developer can really help you make good decisions. And we say that over and over and over again, but you see it happen so much, and it can be very frustrating when somebody pushes back and it's like, come on, just make my design. What I will say also, we won't show it, but shadows. XD allows you to make shadows on things, and the way that you make shadows in the app is not the same way. So just, again, even something as simple as some of these features end up having an effect. So
I think we brought Andrew on today because bringing him in the studio is cheaper than sending him to developer therapy.
Yes.
There's a lot of, these topics are important though. It'd be interesting in the comments if we could get people to just sort of share, where are you at in your journey with design in XD? So, kind of, are you, just getting started and playing around with the program? Are you, picking up maybe your first, freelance job or something? Or are you working, full time? Are you graphic design? Let us know in the comments where you're at, and especially if you have any kind of career-related questions around, how do you maybe get started working with some of, like a person with Andrew's skills, understand kind of these things?
Yeah. We got 10 minutes till the design feedback section of the show. So we can maybe just open it up a little bit. I see people are commenting on the fact that they do code. Cheryl has a degree in graphic design, and programming comes in handy. That definitely, I would say, is probably true. What would be great for a developer well, let's say this. If you're a designer who knows code or who can suffer through code, similar to a developer, you can have empathy for the developer.
Yeah, that's definitely a big part of it.
You know what I mean? Like that's a super powerful thing. Just as if you're a developer who begins to attempt to design something that looks good, you can have empathy for your designer. So having that crossover can really make the collaboration and make the understanding go much better. If you're a designer that can do a little bit of coding to build your own code-based prototype, dynamic prototype, more power to you. That's great, because you can run those initiatives for learning things about your prototypes and seeing how users respond to what you're designing.
Yeah, I'll say a quick note. Like, I have taken a front end course. I've done a few of these things, but in all the teams I've been on, it's been better to deepen my design skill because I've had really good developer partners. But every team's different, and your journey is going to be different. If you're really interested in coding, go for it. If you're really not, fine, just go deeper into design.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with sticking to your craft. I mean,
So in the comments here, Eric says he's been using XD for about a year, and he's full-time at an agency.
Nice.
Congrats on the full-time gig, and glad you're on board here with XD. Rathel says she's using XD to build things in the real world. I like the sound of that. Sammy's just starting to learn in January how to use XD, transitioned from fashion design.
Wow.
Sharp learning curve. And that's really interesting. So
that'd be an interesting discussion of the similarities between fashion design and UI UX design. That would be an interesting stream. Holy cow, that'd be similar.
We've got Cheryl, very new to XD. Welcome. Happy to have you in the XD world. Marcella, multimedia graphic designer. My husband is a computer scientist, and that's very handy.
That's great. That's a powerful duo right there.
That's what I was thinking as well.
Yeah.
We got some more. I think that's our Cornelian from Houston getting some Astros. I think it's Astros.
That's a good guess.
So Sammy's learning UX and how to collaborate, at the startup. Yeah, it's a steep learning curve. I was the second designer at a big startup. Unfortunately, went out of business, but I learned a lot along the way.
Nice thing about a startup is a lot of times they're a little bit more, agreeable to what the kind of collaboration we're talking about here.
Totally. Yeah. Well, it's not that big companies are not agreeable, but they're just are more, they're more flexible.
There can be more structure that can get in the way sometimes.
Yeah.
I've seen that.
Cornelia wants to know, what software do you use to create a dynamic prototype? And ironically, the next thing that Rathel said, which I think was from a different thread, is actually kind of the answer.
Yeah.
There's a lot. The short answer is there's a lot of things, and it's going to depend. With HTML, CSS, JavaScript, Swift. Well, everything up until Swift. You can be doing things on the web. Swift, obviously iOS, but you could do a basic Swift frame to then have a web frame in your app to then do web technologies on iOS. Yep. There's unlimited options, really. Yeah.
But there are interactive. The more I think about it, I'm trying to remember that. I think there might even be some things like there's like Scratch. There are some sort of more like bridges between actually coding, like hardcore coding, and an XD prototype that can give you a little bit of visual. You could investigate that. I wish I had some things off the top of my head, but I know I've seen some things out there that kind of allow you to sort of do some coding-like operations, but not have to fully know the code and that sort of thing. But if you want to learn the code, I say go for it. And yeah, we talked about this yesterday. JavaScript, HTML are a great place to start. You can go a long way with those. It should be said that pretty much everything I did here probably could be done in a JavaScript HTML layout. You know, it'd be a very different end result as far as the implementation is concerned. But it's just worth saying because you know, you can put it in a web view, or you could even load it up in a web page on the phone and say, pretend this is an app screen, right? So you can go a long way with that.
Yeah, totally true. Kelly says, graphic designer, mostly print, just beginning to poke around in UX, very new to me. One thing for anybody that wasn't watching the feed yesterday that we talked about for getting into design, kind of the foundational book was written by a person named Don Norman, and it's called The Design of Everyday Things. So Kelly, if you haven't read The Design of Everyday Things by Don Norman, I highly recommend it. It's just foundational for UX design. And it talks less about, you know, the things we're talking about here of like how to add motion. It talks more about just like, how do you know that a button on a screen, you know, is a button, and like how do you understand how to make these things? And there's language in that book that is foundational and used, you know, every day in my job around affordances of how do I know it's a button, to mapping if I have an idea of what that button does, you know, versus the other button does.
At my last company, okay, this is kind of random, but it relates. At my last company, they had meeting room doors that you had to push open, and you could not pull them open, but they had a handle.
Yep. This is
literally like I would walk up to the door and start pulling it and just walk into the door because I expected it to pull open. And so no, you'd walk into the door and then and then you push the door open.
Exactly.
You know, so it's like it totally matters. Like people are assuming certain things with these languages. Like a handle suggests grab and pull. Don't walk into the
It's totally true, and it's funny because that's like the opening chapter.
No way,
yeah.
No way. Oh, nice. That is awesome. That is awesome. Well, the reason I bring, I remember is because I walked into multiple doors. Like it literally took me forever to remember. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen him walk into doors. This is
yeah, I still do it even when I know it. Even when I understand the paradigm that the door is communicating to me. That's a different topic. Yeah.
So yeah, the book goes on more than just how to get Andrew to navigate his world.
Yeah.
But it does get into use this example. And we can probably go off Andrew's
Yeah, you can go off my
here.
screen now.
Yeah.
Stop scaring people. Go back to Brent. Yeah, there. Hey, much better.
Yeah, I'll tease you we'll close with a real quick look at a different login there. Good example of that door. So you understand there's an affordance of the handle because I can touch it and I grab it and get it attached to this thing. But then the mapping is kind of wrong because that affordance is attached to an action, which if it's a handle should be pull, and if it's push, it should be something that you can't, essentially get your fingers around.
Yeah, good call.
And so there's that dissonance there, and when you start looking for it, these kind of things show up in software all the time because we use physical world analogies a lot, but we're also using software analogies, and that depends on the knowledge base of somebody. Cool. So I'll close here real quick. I just did kind of a fun thing.
So this is
Andrew's
the same.
So this is the same thing, but I just wanted to do a slightly different style, use some different imagery, get the branding in there. So this app is called Story, and it's in this case sort of a outdoor sports oriented video editing app, and this would be the login screen. So we did the email flow before, did the email flow here, and just to show you, end on a nice sort of XD awesomeness highlight about auto animate and using, in this case, strong imagery partnered with your UI. There'd be some specific things that Andrew and I would have to achieve around the placement of this image, because obviously if you block the image down, it'd be hard to read that content on it. You have 37 seconds left to get your design feedback into Discord, I keep saying that.
Okay. At least I know the name.
Yeah.
I can't walk through a door, but I know the name of Discord. Yeah, important things, right?
So yeah, 20 seconds left. Get your designs up there. We'll get through as many as we can. And yeah, another Stephen Krug, I think, writes that book. Don't Make Me Think. Maybe I'm transposing authors.
Yeah,
that's another really good one.
Good stuff.
And yeah.
All right.
So here we are, design feedback countdown.
Yay.
All right.
So what is the daily challenge?
So our daily creative challenge here, go up to our creative challenge. So challenge of today is number 6. Today's challenge, design a smartwatch experience that helps users identify songs. Use voice triggers in prototype mode to initiate actions. And then we have a starter file. And then yesterday we got into the previous day's one too, so we'll probably see some of these.
We may have to do that too.
So challenge number 5 is design an interface for a Chrome extension that allows users to easily bookmark and manage sites. Try designing an asset in Illustrator and importing it with CC libraries. And we will dive in current challenge, and I'll just go up to the most recent ones and work backwards.
Getting some catch up here.
Cool. All right, let's see here. That one says day 3 challenge. Let's look
what day are we? Is this?
I don't ever know what day of the week it is. Challenge from day number 2.
No, wait.
Here we go. Let's do a 5 or 6 challenge here.
Yeah.
And we're just gonna bring this guy over to my other
this looks like
workspace here.
There you go. This looks like a bookmark manager. Book Locker. I love the name.
All right, so as a Chrome extension, actually I want to read the piece again here. Actually, slightly forgot. Chrome extension allows users to easily bookmark and manage sites.
Cool. Nice.
All right. So we are in Book Locker. Let's go ahead and just make this guy full screen here. We're in Book Locker. So I assume this actually probably looks pretty much what it would maybe look like since I am in Chrome to do this. And I've got an ability to search my bookmarks. I'm coming in, this default screen looks like I've selected design articles. I can add a new one, responsive grids, how to actually use them, cool different pieces. So overall, I like this. It's quite simple.
Yeah, very straightforward. I mean,
I'd say the biggest piece that's lacking here, and this may be just a little challenging with it being a Chrome extension because there's kind of a browser integration that needs to be represented, but I'm not quite sure where we're at. Like, is this as seen on my screen? Did I navigate to www.booklocker.com/my username or whatever? Did I come from a Chrome extension, which I think is maybe what's being assumed here? Unfortunately, I didn't see the actual feed for the initial challenge. The other piece, just around like what am I going to get behind these 3 dots? There's no representation of rows here. There's no representation of sort of sectioning off. Like we were talking about affordance just earlier. I understand this is probably a list, partly because I see our scroll bar here. So I see a scroll bar, I assume that this would scroll the list, but some kind of use of light gray boxes, some kind of background, thin, like a light gray outline or something to show me, hey, this is the area that's going to be scrolled. Maybe you don't even need that, but maybe you need some way to, say, have some differentiation between these list items going horizontally. If you want to keep it just super minimal white space, then you have to create a little bit stronger use of what everybody calls the negative space. And I'm sure this is a term that everybody's heard. I'm sure that some of the graphic design people on the chat know even more than I do about this. Quick background on me, we didn't cover. I have a journalism degree and a finance degree, dual undergrad. That's not the most direct route into design, but it is interesting because we do a lot of communication, around the office. So I do a lot of writing. And then, we also do a lot of looking at, analysis metrics, site metrics of what's going on. And so there's a numbers component there.
Yeah.
You don't need to know numbers necessarily to be a designer, but increasingly it does help to be able to just do some basic.
You don't have to know numbers to be a developer either.
I know, and it's kind of true.
It's kind of true. Yeah, I don't actually do much math. I have something to. There's a little bit of confusion. First of all, I like to add new where it is in terms of like it's a very prominent placement, and it allows me to there was a discussion yesterday of like the fab or the floating action button. Where should it go on a web design? And basically that add new. It's very clear. This is the primary action you want the user to take. That said, I don't know what they're adding. Are they adding another category, or are they adding another link? Mm-hmm. So you would want to clarify that, or make it like if they add a link one way and they add a category the other way, or is the assumption that these categories are created sort of automatically? But then the question becomes, well, how do you know? How do you know that these are design articles, that sort of thing? So just, add new, great. I like where it is, but what exactly am I doing with it?
Totally, and it's a perfect lead-in. So the fix, because I like to offer critique and sort of suggestions.
I don't have any of that.
Well, that's fine. Because we're a duo.
That's right. That's right.
Good cop, bad cop.
I present the problem. You give the solution.
Yeah. So what Andrew's kind of talking about is you've got these different categories up here: bookmarks, design articles, sports, and then add new. So add new is grouped with this, and because of the Gestalt laws of proximity, which is a psychology visual design thing. You can read
really
about
are getting to bust out like terminology.
Graphic
here.
design,
that's pretty awesome.
101, 102.
I could have busted out technology or terminology too.
Yeah. I'm more likely to think that I'm going to be adding a new top-level category than I am to be adding a site here. So if you took this Add New button and moved it, even just over to the right, it would disassociate from these pieces. Or it could go, somehow on the top of this thing. Maybe there's some other controls that can be done with these, like a sorting thing, or like Andrew said, we saw, floating action button. You could even have it up here next to the search bar, add new, or it could be plus and then like new bookmark or something. There's different options there. So I like this. This is like a good piece. What I was going to say, the negative space when we started talking about the background. Yeah. So for the horizontal rows here, making those icons a bit smaller, tightening them up left to right against the 2 lines of text, and then just really making sure that like the space in between those rows is very symmetric, and you're getting kind of like a hard line from across the top of a smaller thumbnail to the top of the text and whatnot. And just, you then are using the space in between to sort of say, even though there's no line here, that space in between that's just white is saying, I am a line.
I actually have a question about negative space.
Sure.
Because there are times when I'm say making a layout and programming, and I'm just putting things on the screen, but it can be very hard to know how, like, it seems like I can never find the right balance between giving too little space or too much. Like I'll put things on and there's too little space, so then I add space, but then it looks wrong because I added too much. So it's like, how do you know how much space to put at things? Like, how do you learn?
I mean, it's an art.
Not that I need to know exactly, but I would imagine other people are wondering too.
Yeah, I would say it's an art backed by science. Around how your brain understands, the physical world, basically.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
There are some little kind of rules, like even just on this one, I could say, okay, the button for this red button area, that should probably be about 40 pixels tall for mobile. That's kind of like the general thing to say it's like big enough for a button. And then you've got this space in between all bookmarks and the next card. There's a relationship between the height of that space, which is like about 1 mouse pointer's width.
Sure.
And then the height of the space between these 2 cards.
Yeah.
So, just loosely measuring this one is like maybe 1.5 mouse pointer heights, I guess I said width before.
That's a new official measurement.
Yeah, sure. And so I'm not saying those should be the same, but there's relationships play out. Yeah. Same thing now, the height between the title of Keeper and bookmarks and the height. You should be having some sort of grid layout that is making one, like consistent spacing. That doesn't necessarily fully answer, like, could I remove the shadow on this to then use negative space to say, this negative space is going to be enough and strong enough to preclude using shadow, whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very much more an art than the science. But once you're kind of aware that negative space exists, then you start looking at things a little bit differently.
Interesting. Okay.
So,
that's cool.
Cool. All right. So looking at this design, we also see a comment. We got Claude in here.
Hey, Claude.
Thanks. We paid Claude to come in and say that we're good.
We pay people to compliment us.
Yeah. So look forward to your payment email, Claude. Just kidding. Claude sits about 2 desks away from me on the Spark team, so we're happy to have him. And now since I called him out, he can't troll me as hard as maybe he would have otherwise.
Oh, he can.
Yeah, he still could. We'll see what he's got.
Yeah.
Yeah. Claude is also a frequent person on the Adobe Live. So you look through the archives, check out some of Claude's streams, and his hair's a little shorter now, but there are some streams where he's got a pretty big.
Claude, you should say what you talked about on your streams. Let us know.
Cool. All right. So
free promo for you.
There we go.
Get your payment.
Yeah. So looking at this design, we'll sort of critique this one. So again, the prompt, and I'm just going to zoom in a little bit.
I like the look of this in general. It's very, I like that, the keeper, I like the font, I like the logo, that sort of thing.
Yeah, this looks really nice right off the bat. Looks really, really professional. So we talked about like negative space before. You know, this space in between here clearly shows that like there's a list item on the left, and then there's this list on the right. And these are sort of two discrete things. I don't necessarily need a line in here to say, okay, these are separate. That space kind of does it. Really great left alignment here on the text. You know, sometimes it can get confusing, like should I center a line or whatever? All these icons are lined up. You know, the space in between icon and text, both horizontally and vertically, looks pretty balanced. You know, there's not too narrow between the icon and text, and they're not too spaced out. One thing that strikes out is you've got the Keeper logo up here, and it's pretty far from the top of the screen, so it doesn't, you know, you could bump it up just a little bit. I think that's relatively okay. But then I noticed this all bookmarks is jumping up above Keeper. And so, you know, this logo is kind of the center of your design. I say center, not like obviously geometric center, but it's one of the first things that people are going to look at, and their eyes are going to go from there. So depends on what else you have that might need to fit in this application. But I'd take this whole bookmarks list and move it down what would be about 100 pixels. So it's maybe in line with like the top of the all bookmarks button, or maybe the bottom of the logo or something.
Yeah.
Something you can consider.
Yeah, so are you saying like maybe the Keeper logo could live like just kind of at a higher point in the page, and then the actual
you could bring this whole piece on the left could actually just go up about 100 pixels,
and then the right,
so it would be higher. Then looking over the thumbnail preview, like the shadows are nice, but one thing that always bugs me, and this is just an opinion, you know, the menu's not on a card at all or anything, and so this is just looks great on a white background, and then there's shadows on this card. And you're sort of playing with depth here, so now it appears that the card is essentially higher, you know, vertical level than the menu on the background. I don't think it's unjustified, but that's, you know, something to consider. Look around at different.
What would be an alternative?
Pieces. Just a border outline, or putting like your navigation over here on a card or something. The cards should, you know, you don't want to get carried away. It's a nice pattern. Material design does it well, but it can be a little tricky sometimes when you're mixing them. Again, that's just an opinion. I think it's totally viable. I would just want to see, you know, before we ship this, I'd want to see some other approaches. Maybe we'd come back to this. So yeah, all right, let's continue on. That was a good, let's continue on to the next one here. Where were we? Okay, there we go. And then this one, let's see here, which day is this? 5th assignment. Let's stay in our 5th one. All right, so
we get more of a view of it.
It looks like we may have had some. So again, I didn't see the original challenge. So it looks like that we had some UI that was shared out, because I see it's exactly the same.
Oh, okay.
So this is actually really interesting.
Oh, interesting.
Now, actually, this builds on my previous comment very nicely. So two things, one positive and one maybe more opportunity jump out. This is being presented in context of where this application lives. So we see the Google Chrome UI there. Super helpful to know where this is supposed to be. We know we're supposed to be looking at you know, a web page, Chrome //bookmarks.
Yeah. Right.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And it's really important to pull your head out of your initial design world and think about, I need to bring people along for the story of this application. And that's really critical. Is like, where is it? You know, if you showed this to me on an iPad, I'd have a different understanding of what that was. Let's say maybe the only thing that's missing here is like, does Keeper get Chrome, like you see up on here, actually use Pocket for the same purpose? And so I've got my little web Chrome browser extension up here for that. So they could have added something there, but that's fine. We'll let it slide. The second point, so that was the good thing. The second point that could be a point of opportunity was around sort of shadows in these cards. Now, this one is doing a sort of double level card by having a shadow around the thumbnail of the website and then also the thumbnail of the card. And this gets a little challenging because you kind of only have so many layers of depth you can really work with. And so if anybody's familiar with this thing called Z-axis, that's kind of how we talk about in design and especially in development of the layer that it's on.
Another Z-index.
Yeah, it's basically what layer. You're on layer in XD. And so here we've got the first layer is what the navigation is sitting on. The second layer would be the card. So if this was a physical card. The third layer, the highest one up, is then the card that's sitting on top of the card. And there's just not really a justification, especially for this, what I just called the third layer, which is the second thing with the shadow here. In this design, there are more advanced designs probably out there. I can't think of one off the top of my head that does the double kind of card thing. I'm thinking more around games, like a casino card comes to mind or something. So I would just kill the shadow on this top level one. And then just like before, maybe look at other treatments. I think the shadow is viable for these cards, but other treatments that might.
Well, if I can add to that, the thing to realize about material design particularly, and this is using some of material design, is that it's called material for a reason. It's not just a nice name. Like the idea was the paradigm is materials. And working with materials, that everything on your screen is sitting on a material. And so by doing that, by putting things on these materials, you can morph them. That's the one thing you can't do in real life, but you can sort of use this concept of a material to expand. Like, this is the link in your Keeper app. It's a card. It's a piece of paper that's got the link written on it, let's just say. And when you click on it, it expands to have the whole page. That's like one thing you could do. I wouldn't recommend that. People don't want the web page to live in your card, whatever. But the point is that the material is meant to communicate something. So just like motion should be used to communicate something, the materials you choose, or should you choose to put something on a material, because that's what you're doing. When you put it on a card, you're putting it on a material. You're trying to communicate something. So as soon as you introduce that shadow, like Brent says, you're saying this is a card, this is a thing. So by having two shadows, you're saying this image is a thing. This image is a material. Why does it need to be a material? It really doesn't, So also, I believe the material design specs might specify explicitly, like don't put a shadow under an image in a card. But again, the reason is because it's communicating something. It's saying, this is a material, this is a thing, and maybe it'll grow, maybe it'll move, maybe it'll fade out, that sort of thing. So realize that even with that drop shadow, you're communicating a concept. And so you want to just think about what you're trying to communicate.
Yeah, it's well said. And I just wanted to go to material design guidelines here to show, this is a good demonstration.
There's the expanding, yeah.
And if you look through, this card section and really all material design, because it's a very card-heavy UI system, you're going to see a lot of places where it's clear that these are sort of discrete pieces that can be moved around and manipulated kind of on their own. So that's why I said, for these other designs, it's definitely like my opinion that sometimes it's not necessary to have those shadows when you have other navigation, that's maybe not on that. But there are also things to think about. It's a art backed up by science.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
All right, let's keep going on the day 5 challenge here with the Chrome bookmarks. And this I like because now we're sort of seeing a couple riffs on the same piece.
Yeah.
And so I see what looks like up here, what I talked about in the last one, around wanting some indication of how did I trigger that.
Yeah.
So I'm probably seeing this web page now because I hit that piece, this little UI here. And then I see we've got the different sort of categories of folders, and then each of our cards for the website. So the first thing that jumps out is just like, the visual style of representing folders with a folder. We do live in the age of touch devices, of iPads, and Android devices where largely because of things like material design, we have a little bit different foundational relationship with how information is presented on a digital screen.
Yeah.
And the folder thing is still very valid. We still obviously use the concept of folders, but the iconography around a manila folder is not necessarily what I would say is like the kind of way that people are thinking as much when you have material design and whatnot.
Sure. So what would be an alternative?
Well, I will say it depends on who you're designing for. So let's just say, very hypothetically, that you are the IT administrator at I was going to say a nursing home, but that just sounded so rude, actually.
How about a college? How about that?
Well, I was going to say somebody who's, maybe became a web user in the early days of the web and are used to, folder structure.
Oh, I see what you're saying, where the demographic skews older. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking I've done some IT design projects for little things for my grandmother, actually, and I made sure to keep it limited.
Is it like would a retirement home be better?
Let's move on from
this is getting
this
dangerous.
topic. But you do have to think about who's your user and what analogies they'll say. I do know, I saw a funny tweet, and it had a save icon like you'd see in Microsoft Office, and it has the floppy disk icon on it.
Yeah.
And this person who I guess would now be early college age had tweeted out saying, "Why is there an icon of a vending machine in Microsoft Office?" And people thought, well, what do you mean vending machine? And then he retweeted and pointed out, this is where you choose the snacks, this is where you put in the money, and this is where you get your snack out.
Yeah, I mean, the floppy disk is such like an anachronism nowadays. It's so funny.
So with this, I would think about, you don't need the folders here, sports, life, text, travel, money. If you present it in a slightly different way, where let's underline one of these, give it kind of a bold treatment, we'll understand that that's picking the sort of folder set below. And then like search bookmarks, it's nice that you have this at the top level, above everything. Both the visual placement of it kind of has some indication of I'm searching all of these bookmarks. If my search bar was below in this area, then maybe I would just think I'm searching the selected ones. So you could put it maybe just on the right side, bring up the whole design. That would still imply that the search is global. And then we see here, like there's a very, very light shadow on this, which helps define the edge for like this Nike one is kind of light. It's a really nice gradient on each of these that's well executed. Maybe I'd want to see a URL preview, like just the core, like just the piece right after www or something, so I know kind of where I'm going. I do see these like little icons, so that looks like it's from Forbes. I don't know what this was, but if I had bookmarked it, obviously I would know what that is. So yeah, overall that's a good foundation. Definitely a good place to start. Let's find another one. And we're coming up on about 7 minutes left in the stream. So if you have other questions that we haven't gotten to, or if there's anybody that you can still submit if your design hasn't been reviewed and you really want to, just shout out and we can find it in here.
If you're on the chat and you want to see it, definitely do that. Camille, you are asking what we're working on. If you're wondering about the stream, definitely check out the video of yesterday and today that we were in the studio yesterday kind of starting things, and today we got somewhere else. But we were talking about the designer-developer workflow, collaboration, prototyping, prototyping strengths of, prototyping abilities of XD, prototyping abilities of actual apps. So definitely check it out.
Yeah, it's cool. So we got this person here, I know had asked for their design to be reviewed yesterday, and they said it was from the first day of this series. So we're gonna go back and see.
Cool.
So challenge day 1. So this is last one we'll do here. Choose a personal hobby or interest and then design a mobile experience for users to learn more about it.
1 minute.
Okay, thank you. We're getting the 1 minute actually.
1 minute, all right, so
let's
move
go
fast.
hop over here. And
I like it. This is nice.
so this looks like we got a personal finance is our interest hobby. So first glance visual design, this looks really solid. Good use of color. Placement and everything helps me understand, this is my navigation, got these different cards, the history. This navigation I'm a little confused on. This probably shouldn't bleed all the way to the edge. History maybe should be within the gray, the yellow area here. Finance, I don't really know. That's kind of nondescript title. May just be placeholder. And then I guess these are positive and negative. These spaces could be tightened up a lot, and you probably don't need the red dots here. That's kind of taken care of by the color. You could think of maybe a more minimal way to do this. This is taking up a lot of space. The black dark color of these icons has kind of aggressive contrast. You could add just a little bit of tan into that black. It would smooth those out. And then this green phone, I think I'm going to call to add more money. No, just kidding. Green is just being used
I like that idea.
in two contexts here. So there you go.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks for watching,
covers
everybody.
about a minute. Really awesome.
Yeah.
And we're excited to have everybody here. That concludes our developer partnership stream.
Yeah.
And thanks a whole lot.
Yeah.
Catch you later.